In the world today, there are 7.8 billion people, 7 continents, and 6,500 spoken languages around the world. Out of all that mess of people and languages and places to live, there are people across the world who think just like you and just like me. They have the same thoughts, actions, and tendencies, even though they live in a different culture. I think immersing yourself in different cultures is super important because it broadens your horizons and it doesn't limit you to social standards. I also don't believe that you have to fly halfway across the world to experience a new culture. You could go 30 minutes down the road and see how the Amish live. You could go into a big city and see how the homeless people live, see the homelessness problem. You could go anywhere around you that isn't like the place that you live, and you are immersing yourself inside of a new culture. I think that you can break down a culture into 3 basic principles: the people, the way of life, and the food. The last one's kind of my favorite. I think in any small town, especially like here in Hershey, we live in a bubble. And this causes us to kind of be naive to what the rest of the world looks like. And see, the thing is, you might be able to see the rest of the world through the lens of another person, but you won't really get to experience that for yourself unless you see it with your own eyes. That's what's so powerful and dangerous about seeing the world through the eyes of other people, because while it's super easy with social media and TV and all that stuff, it'll often paint a picture in your head of what these other cultures are like that might not be true. But I think starting with the people, it's really intriguing to me to see how other people think and their countenance in these other parts of the world. I have been fortunate enough to go to 9 different countries, 5 continents, and I've flown tens of thousands of miles. And I think it's really cool that I've gotten to see all these parts of the world and how the people there operate. For example, in Europe, in England, and in the Czech Republic, it's often like here in America, where at first the people are kind of standoffish. They're a little more closed off. They're not as open to conversation. Whereas the people in the South Pacific, like Australia and Fiji, or in the Middle East, like Egypt or Lebanon, they're a lot more friendly and they're a lot more open to conversation, and they'll even let these random strangers just inside their home, because that's how they bond, that's how they show appreciation, that's how they show love. And I think it's really intriguing to see how in these other parts of the world, like in the Middle East or in the South Pacific or in Asia, like the people will literally give you the clothes off their back. One time I was in Egypt and I saw this one guy walking by and I really liked his sunglasses. So I stopped and I said, "Hey, I really like your sunglasses." And then immediately, he didn't really speak English super well, but like he understood what I said. And immediately he took his sunglasses off and handed them to me. And I was confused because all I said was that I liked them. But he wanted to give me his sunglasses because he knew that I liked them. And he did this without a thought, he did this without hesitation, and he did this with no other motive. That's just how the culture operates. And I think this just goes to show how in other parts of the world, even the more impoverished parts, they're willing to give, they're willing to show affection, they are willing to help other people out more than in some of these rich, big countries in the world. Now, moving on to the way of life, it kind of ties in with how the people think and how they act, but this just literally, it goes back to the culture of the place that you are going to. Once again, Europe is a lot like the States, where the people are promptly on time, they don't miss a beat, they follow a schedule, they have these long work days, they have hours. But again, like in South America, in the Middle East, and in other parts of the world, time is almost non-existent. So for example, one time when I was in Fiji, I was there to do a church service with my team. And we got there about 15 minutes early, to be ready for when it starts so that we didn't just like spring ourselves on the people who were hosting us. But then come to find out that there's a saying in Fiji called Fijian time, where a time for something to start and end, it basically does not exist. And it's really cool to see, because the church service started at 10 o'clock. We didn't actually start church until almost 11:30 that day. And so it just goes to show that the people value relationships more than time. Because oftentimes the reason that people are late is because they're spending time with friends, they're spending time with loved ones, they're spending time with their family, and they just know that's more important than trying to stick to a schedule. And I think there's something really beautiful about that fact, because it shows that in that part of the world they really value relationships. One thing to realize as well with the way of life is, what are the income gaps? You see, like here in the States, you have everyone from insane poverty to mass wealth. But generally speaking, the average person in the States is much better off than other people in many parts of the world. But on the flip side, you go to a country in Africa or in the Middle East and you see that they are impoverished, like impoverished beyond impoverished. And it really breaks your heart, because a lot of times they'll have all these resources or they'll have all these things that could accumulate them wealth, but the government in place and the leadership in place is corrupt. And so that's another thing that really affects the way of life, and it also affects the people. But oftentimes you'll see the people, they can persevere a lot more through these hardships than the people in other parts of the world. They can still come out with a smile on their face. The third thing I want to talk about today is the food, which is arguably my favorite part. One of the most fun things when you travel and experience a new culture is getting to eat their delicious food. And sometimes the food might sound a little weird, but it's almost always good. So let's say you're one of those people who want to experience a new culture, but you aren't able to go across the world or to Europe or to Africa or to Asia. You can go a 20-minute drive and eat with the Amish. And I've done this, and it is such a cool experience because you get to see how their family works. They have these big families, and they all help out with the food, and that is their business, is the food. And they make some of the best food you will ever have, I promise you. And then you can go to other parts of the world like Asia or in South America, where their food is super good, but it's unlike anything that you've had. It's full of spices, it's full of flavor, and you get to eat a bunch of stuff that you would never usually eat just because you haven't broadened your horizons or opened your mind to trying something new. And that all relates back to immersing yourself in a different culture and why you should do it. When you go and try to immerse yourself in a different culture, you should go into it observing these 3 points: the people, the way that the people live, and the food that's available to you.